Hello everybody, Hubbles Cat. So the situation in Iran seems to be tempered down for now. The United Nations have had an emergency debate and basically they're telling the Americans and the Iranians that they have to sit down. What we know from Iran is that the Ayatollah Khomeini and his regime have been overthrown by a military junta, and that military junta appears to be seeking peace with the West and specifically the United States. It's been an awful blow to Iran and also to the UAE and other countries that border the Strait of Hormuz because of the tidal waves and the radioactive water and the radioactive clouds. It's just a huge, horrific mess. And hopefully some good will come out of this. But what's come out of it right now for me is that our gasoline prices are about $12 Canadian a litre. And I think the US prices are like 15 US a gallon. And that's when you can get it. A lot of the pumps are running dry. People are getting pretty desperate. The government up here has actually announced plans to start rationing of gasoline to make sure that, quote, essential services get it. I'm not sure if I'm an essential service, but I'm going to try. You never know. But it's touched off huge anger and resentment right across the globe. There's a lot of people unemployed. There's a lot of desperation. And as you're going to see from this montage, there's an awful lot of violence, and most of it's being directed towards corporate stores and the police. I'm not going downtown anytime soon, and when I finish with this montage I just want to talk about what's going on with Washington DC right now, because that's truly apocalyptic. Truly, the police are on the run everywhere, and it's just awful. I can't imagine what it's like. The anger and the fury of the newly unemployed and the newly hopeless, with gasoline through the roof, food through the roof, no jobs at all, and no real sign from the West that we can figure this out at all. Strangely enough, the only major city that appears to be quite outside of China is Hong Kong. They seem to be doing just fine. Of course, this is probably propaganda. And they put an awful lot of troops into Hong Kong, and there's been nobody allowed in or out of Hong Kong for the last week since the nuke bombs went off in Iran, and I think they're just clearing up the decks down there. But what they're pushing out via RT Russia Today and their other allies is we're doing fine, and I doubt they are. For sure Washington DC is not. That's been in chaos now. They're on their 5th day of rioting. This is just some scenes from it. think a lot of the news reporters are no longer covering any of this stuff because I think they've been told to tamper it down and not to encourage people to do this. But the rioting in Washington DC is like in the 5th day. I know from people who work in the hospitals down there, the hospitals are overrun, they're short of supplies, and it seems very likely that the National Guard, in fact the army units, regular army units, may well be called into Washington DC, which is of course troubling everybody who's a constitutionalist. But what are you going to do? Let the unemployed smash the police and kill them and burn everything to the ground? Yeah, it's truly bad.
It was supposed to be a peaceful protest. But it was anything but.
The press office.
We're going to market. You're gay.
Crowds scattering. All order is gone. Then this. A Catholic teenager races out to pelt the Protestants. From the safety of a Catholic neighbourhood, he continues the barrage. It's like a red rag to a bull. Protestants taunt the Catholics. Police reinforcements race forward.
It's become split, it's become violent. The protest is free running in the area.
Soon, lines emerge. A tense standoff that has become all too familiar in recent weeks.
I mean, while this is all being blamed on Brexit, I mean, to be honest with you, it's the same pattern all across the globe right now. Is lots of young and middle-aged people are out on the streets throwing bricks at the police and throwing bricks at each other and burning and firing. The sad thing about all this is they seem to have plenty of gasoline and I don't have any. So I'm trying to figure out how to get to work this week. It's going to be difficult. I think with the gasoline we have stored up I can get there, but I think instead of coming back every day, I just can't. So when Kitty and me are working together, we're going to have a problem with the dogs. So seeing if her parents can come round and feed them a couple of times while we're out at work. I mean, we can get there and back, but once a week maybe, or twice a week maybe. But to go there every day is impossible, and the streets are actually pretty much empty of vehicles right now. As you probably saw in a lot of the riots, people who are driving around in obvious limos and luxury vehicles or obvious unmarked police vehicles are tending to find that the vehicles being smashed to pieces and burned. Now the thing is, like, even if you pull out a gun, if you're faced with 500 people who are just insane with rage, they're going to kill you. I mean, are you going to pull out your gun and start shooting to protect a vehicle? I don't know. It's a state of absolute chaos and absolute lawlessness in pretty much most of the big and small towns all across North America and in large parts of Europe right now. This is just some scenes from the local Walmart and the mall near us in Newmarket. As you can see, pretty much all the stores have folded, and what's left when you go inside is vandalised and destroyed mall. How can you rebuild from this? I don't know. The government certainly doesn't seem to be able to act, but I don't know. Something has to be done, and it has to be done soon. Well, that's it from me at the end of an extraordinary week. Peace in the Middle East by nuclear war, I guess. Gasoline about $450 Canadian a tank. Food's having a huge problem coming into the stores, and what's getting in is not very good quality and pretty pricey, as you can imagine. The trucking industry is suffering huge and large scale losses. I don't know what we're going to do. It's an absolute total disaster. The governments are still meeting in emergency session. Like I say, Canada's setting out a rationing plan both for food and electricity and for gasoline. Some sort of emergency powers act or something Justin Trudeau is going to embrace for himself. And at the moment I don't think people really care. They want this nightmare to be over. It was only a few short months ago that everything looked good. We were going to build a beautiful house in the country. And now I don't know if I can keep this place going. Like I say, interest rates are really, really high. Work slashed, hours for everybody that can. Sadly, I have to work as much as ever. But like I say, my pay's down about 25% at this point, and they're supposed to be cutting further off our actual pay, and taxes and everything's going through the roof. it's an absolute horrible nightmare. If I hadn't have stored up food and I hadn't stored up some cash, quite a bit of cash, I don't know what we'd have done. I know a lot of people are struggling, and I'm going to talk about that next week. Garage sales, like 24/7 in all the estates now. People are just bringing anything out onto the street and trying to sell it, trying to hope that somebody will give them some cash so they can go to the store and see if they can buy some bread or milk or eggs. Like I say, I've still got buckets of flour left over, and we're not doing too bad for that. As you can see, I'm not losing that much weight, but man, it's a mess. Anyway, wherever you are in the world, stay safe and form a little community around you. This is an SHTF. Hopefully it won't go on much longer, but if it does, we need each other. Take care.